Welcome to part 2 of the Tottenham's Sensible Transfers episode, where we will be going over recommended signings for Spurs today, specific signings that we've thought out whilst considering the transfer fees, homegrown and club-grown status, and the gaps within Tottenham's squad. If you haven't seen part 1 and what's led up to this moment, you can find it on any channel you want, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever your poison is. But to discuss it all, we've got Johnny with us. How are you, mate?
Very good, thank you, Jim. How are you, mate?
I'm doing very well, thank you. We have Stu. How are you, mate?
All good, thank you. Good to see you all.
Good to see you too. And of course we have Deej. How are you, sir?
Doing good.
Great. So guys, shall we start with defensive recruits for this first part of the episode? So we've all picked out a different player we think would add value to the squad this year. And Johnny, I'll start with you. Who have you picked out?
So we kind of literally went through all of the rumours and all of the players that were sort of potentially realistic in terms of the budget and the wages, and at the same time strengthening our current squad and hopefully pushing for like a starting position. So I've gone for Riccardo Calafiori from Bologna. Now, the only issue is there's a lot of rumours that say he's agreed personal terms with Juve, but I'm not seeing those on every reputable site or anything like that. So there's nothing signed or anything. But looking at him, and I only literally found that out this evening, so that was a bit of a bummer. But yeah, I like him because I think he would be genuinely strong competition for Udogie, and obviously Udogie has been a superb addition. But he's got no real competition as a wing back. So I think that he's somebody who's got a lot of pace. He's very physical. He's pretty handy with crossing. He's a good dribbler, and I don't think his financial situation is going to be prohibitive at all. At the moment, he's earning 16,000 a week. That's very manageable. And then I think in terms of a fee, he's only 22. So we're talking about somebody who's not going to break the bank, but it's just a matter of would he be a player that we would go for? I don't know. He's got a lot of technical ability, pretty good offensively, and I think the issues that he has, there's apparently some injury history there. I don't know what that actually consists of, but that's sort of something I've read in a couple of different places. And as with a lot of these wingbacks, in terms of defensive consistency, seems to be a little bit of an issue. But I think that he definitely, from the clips I've seen of him, he looks like he looks like a player who would genuinely push Udogie, and it's somebody who I think that he's got a bit of versatility to him. He can play in the midfield, and he can play centre back if needed, if something happened to Van de Ven. So I think he's a player who's a legitimate target, whether he's somebody who Spurs will pursue or have really been actively interested in. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I liked that he can play left centre back as well.
Yeah,
that definitely adds value there. And I'm sure, Stu, you've seen him before, but I believe he has one cap for Italy. So if he is playing in the internationals in the upcoming weeks, it would be worth keeping an eye out for him.
he along with Buongiorno are looked as the kind of future, obviously with Destiny as well, as the future defensive back line for Italy. So he's really an up-and-coming player. So as you said, Johnny, he's been linked with Juve, but the Juve Italian press links are just as bad as the UK ones. They'll just link players, go with any of the tend to be any of the Milan clubs and Juve all the time. They're linked to everybody. So hopefully that's not true.
Good. Stu, then I'll pass over to you. Who have you picked out?
So the one I was looking at was Geertruida from Feyenoord. Mm-hmm. So he's obviously a right back. With the rumours that the Emerson is very likely going to Milan, we're clearly going to need a backup for Pedro. And he, I think, would come and he would push Pedro. He wouldn't be coming to sit on the bench, that's for sure. This is a player that he's also been linked with Liverpool, obviously, with Slot going there. Again, I don't think the expectation of what Feyenoord is looking for is outside of the realms of reality. It's like 30 million quid, 32 million euro. His salary for Dutch standards is quite high, but again, it's easily fit within our budget. It was about 42,000. He's young. He's 23, turns 24 next month. Obviously, he's being capped for the Dutch national team, but he's been capped through all the age groups. So this is someone that obviously has been a high-profile player since he's been a kid. So he's been dealing with pressure since he was a kid. He's played almost 200 games for Feyenoord already. He's played Champions League football. This is a player that can play right centre back if he has to. So he could also be, cover if necessary. He's also played as a defensive midfielder in the past. So he is quite, a utility player, if necessary. The only kind of weakness that he does have, because he's fast, he's very, very fast as well. He's physical. He's strong on the tackle. He does kind of short passes. He's not known for his long passing. He doesn't dive into tackles. He stands up to his man, which I do like. He does like a pot shot. The only thing that perhaps is a weakness is his crossing isn't the best. Again, that's something that hopefully it's something he can improve on, because that's something again we've been struggling with, I think, this season. So that isn't the greatest thing, but I think he'd be a really, really great asset and something that fits within our budget.
He's another one that's in the international team as well, isn't he? So if those want to watch him, he should be playing for Holland throughout the international break. So check out Geertruida. That's Geertruida with a G, Geertruida. So yeah, check him out. So far we have from Johnny Calafiore and Geertruida from Stu. And Deej, who did you have in mind from a defensive perspective?
I've been looking at two players that have been linked recently, so I haven't had too much time to look into them. But Hiroki Ito, we've had sort of a bit of interest in for I think a while now. I've heard the name's been bouncing around since I think at least December, so I've had a bit more time to look at him. He would be our backup left center back essentially, which is somewhere that I think we definitely need to improve upon, because right now we're kind of throwing if Van de Ven isn't playing, then we're throwing somebody who isn't comfortable playing on the left side and playing them there, and that only causes issues. So he plays currently in the left side of a back three for Stuttgart, who just came in second in the Bundesliga, which is quite impressive for them. He's solid on the ball, but isn't that big into tackling. His tackling numbers are like almost ridiculously low, but that's not necessary. That's more as the same thing with Van de Ven's heading numbers at Wolfsburg last year. That's kind of more of a stylistic choice than something that we necessarily need to be worried about. There are some. He's, like I said, he's good on the ball. He's got a decent passing range, and he would cost about £25 million. 30 million euros are the numbers that I've seen thrown out. Obviously, that's by transfer rumor account, so those numbers don't actually mean anything. But I'm also I can't rate these players by how much they cost either. So we'll just have to wait and see. Apparently, he does have a release clause. I don't know what the value is. I haven't seen that number being reported anywhere, but that would make me believe those 25, 30 million numbers a bit more.
And you said that was Ito, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so being Japanese as well, maybe Ange had his eye on him. He does like to watch the Japanese league, and I know he's playing for Stuttgart at the moment, and the Japanese international team for obvious reasons. So you never know. It's the type of player that we might find Ange thinks is a bit of a undercover signing that some other clubs might not have taken a look up yet. So he does seem to make sense on paper. His contract expires in 2027, though, so I guess it is one of those that it could be difficult to prize him away.
Yeah, but like I said, there is a release clause if we really want him.
So yeah. So we've got to just mention Kyle Walker-Peters and say, yes, we have considered him. We just didn't want to go for the super obvious suggestions. Yes, he makes sense. Out of contract soon. 30% of him we technically own from a sell-on clause perspective, so he would be available cheap, etc., etc., etc. But I wanted to flag Stu, you'll probably know him, but a Juventus wing-back in Ealing Jr., who was a Chelsea Academy product. And I know we didn't have him listed as homegrown, but I've done some research, and apparently he has scraped into the homegrown status coming from the Chelsea Academy. Someone will probably have to verify that, but there's conflicting stuff, but most of it seems to say he is homegrown. The thing I like about him is he's extremely fast, a really good dribbler. He's also versatile, so he can play left wing as well. I'm not convinced that we're going to be able to play Son twice a week consistently, just because of the demands on his body and at his age. And I'm also not convinced that you want to be completely reliant on Werner. So I think it's a nice option with Hill going out as well, to have that as backup there and that depth. He's also used to playing in a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2. And I think at the age of 20, he's got a lot of potential to continue to grow. And like I said, he's homegrown, so he could be one that makes sense. And also, he's out of contract in the next season in 2025, so he could be available for a good price as well. So Ealing Jr. is the one I've put in there from a defensive perspective. So should we move on to midfield, or are there any other honourable mentions anyone wanted to pop in there?
I just had one Giorno, who I mentioned previously from Torino, and Hato is the 18-year-old Ajax centre defender who actually made his debut as a 16-year-old. He's clearly very promising. He's already captained Ajax, so I think at 18 years old, captaining it's one of the most famous sides in European football, and he's already made his Dutch national team debut as well. So that's someone who can play left centre back or left back as well.
And then just one more player that I've seen linked that is kind of exciting is Vanderson from to back up Poro. I think he would be I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name correctly. Geertruida. Is definitely a player that I'd be happy to get, but part of me is worried about a player who isn't the best with crossing, because that's like such a big part of what Porto brings to our system and Ange's system. So looking at someone like Vanderson, who's more attack-minded, is also something that would interest me.
Good suggestions there, guys. So we'll move on to midfield next. And Johnny, I'll start with you here. Who did you have in mind from a midfield perspective? And was there a position you prioritised when looking at this in the midfield?
You're on mute, mate.
Is it me or is it you?
Yeah, you, Johnny.
Yeah. All right, big bird.
That's right.
Well, I guess I didn't want to necessarily go for the most obvious candidates, but like clearly the biggest need is really like a 6 if we're looking at the midfield. And I was looking at Fofana, who is currently in Monaco, having mentioned Vanderson there. There's strong links, or there's certainly been links with him, Liverpool and Arsenal over the last while. But I think there are other options in midfield that I looked at as well, but I think as a serious potential upgrade, then he is somebody who looks very, very good. I think it might be difficult to get him, depending on the club's focus on whichever targets they've been looking at, obviously. But I think that he is somebody who's, again, very physical. He's breaks up the opposition's play. Would be a good partner, I think, for to allow our forward, our more attacking midfielders, the freedom to push forward in the way that like Busuma has not been so consistent. I think that from what I've seen, he seems to be a very strong tackler, very good defensively, which is really what we're looking for. It's very strong and athletic. Again, like these are qualities we saw from Busuma at the beginning of the season. I don't know, like obviously there's lots of players that come from Liga and have made the step to the Premier League very successfully, but I guess he's unproven, and as with most players from Europe, seems to have a little bit of a discipline issue. But I guess when he's playing in a 6, you're going to get a lot of cards. And he played for France. I've seen when I was looking at the clips there, he's been he's only 23, but I think he's a player with a lot of improvement still to come. He's going to cost more, but again, at the moment, his salary is only $12,000 a week.
Johnny, I would say though, just to interject there on the cost, he's out of contract next season.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 2025. Yeah. So I think there's just going to be a matter of competition because, like, again, Paris Saint-Germain are linked, as you'd probably expect, looking at the up-and-coming players in the French league. So it's just a matter of can Tottenham do the job to persuade him to come if he's a player that they're serious about? But I think that he looks like a player who's definitely got the potential to prove the starting 11, which is what we're obviously looking for, without necessarily breaking the bank again.
And Stu, what about you? Who did you have in mind for yours?
I've also picked a 6, a player that I've been going on about all year, Edison from Atalanta. I think he'd be brilliant for us. He is turning 25 next month, so he's still a good age. He just a couple of days ago got his Brazil debut, so obviously he'll be buzzing for that. But also shows you the level he's at if he's already getting picked for the Brazil national team. Like Johnny said for the other player, he also picks up quite a lot of yellow cards as the 6th position. It's not uncommon. He's very strong in the tackle, reads the play really well, intercepts the opposition when they're on the break. His passing's not bad either, and surprisingly enough, for 6 XT this season's come up with quite a few goals and assists. So he can add to the attacking segment of the game as well, not just as a defensive breaker for the opposition, attacking us and defending our back line. So I think he'd be a really, really strong asset. And his salary clearly fits in with what we're on, because he's on about 45,000 at Atalanta. Atalanta are said to want around 40 million euros for him. But again, it's not crazy money. The only problem is apparently he's been linked with Liverpool. And I think, if we in Liverpool go for him, then, I hate to say it, but it's probably a no-brainer that he goes there.
Yeah. And I guess looking at who we've selected so far, we've also got the issue now where we're already at our limits of how many non-homegrown players we could potentially sign now. If we were to go ahead with what, of course, are the most logical and sensible options for Spurs to sign. But there are, I'd say, he does make complete sense. I think if we went for him, he'd probably be the marquee. Like, there's an episode that's due to release on Monday. It's already pre-recorded, but I sat down with Ben, who you might have heard on the Fighting Cock Other People. He's a specialist in the finance side of football. So we figured out how much Spurs could spend. I don't want to give it all away, but there is room for that kind of 50, 60, 70 million pound signing for us again this summer, amongst others. But it's which player we drop it on. And I do think a 6 is probably the priority for us to spend the bigger money signing on, because those wing backs we discussed earlier, there's lots to exploit. There's wing backs and centre backs in the last year of their contract that are on low wages, and we could probably get for 15, 20 million quid. That makes sense. Hedtrudia does, I'm pronouncing it awfully, Stuart, you can do it properly for me. But again, that player would probably be somewhere in the region of up to 30. Calafiori is probably in the region of up to 30. Eiling Jr. is probably around 15. So I think we can afford to drop that money. And Edison is one that I just can't resist thinking would be great. So he does excite me. Deej, who did you have in mind?
So I went for Mats Vifer. Probably butchered the name there again. But he is a defensive midfielder for Feyenoord. And he has been, I think he's with me for the last 2 seasons, especially. I think he is the player that I think that he has room to improve, as he's only 24 still. So he certainly has room to grow. There's the biggest concern I think that I have with him is that he plays at the Eredivisie, which is a fantastic league, but isn't as physical as potentially other leagues, and especially as a 6. That's something that you definitely are going to need to. You're going to need to be ready to be the most physical. Because I think that you could argue that the 6th is the most physical area on the pitch, especially for the kind of play that we have. I think, but otherwise, he seems to have a really good read of the game. He's got, again, a very good passing range. He does a lot of man management. I don't know how to pronounce it, but not only knowing where he needs to go, but if other people aren't in the right space, he is not shy about letting them know that you need to go over there, you need to go, the kind of like what Højbjerg does, the Højbjerg point.
You're not selling him well by saying he's Højbjerg like that.
I mean, Højbjerg telling people where to go is nothing. I'm comparing to him in one particular area. I think he's got pretty good stamina from what I can tell, though that's obviously not something that I can that I know intimately. But yeah, I don't know. He's a pretty decent all around player. He's again a longer contract. He'll probably be more expensive because of that, but still someone that I think is at least worth a look at if we're trying to upgrade on Basuma.
Interesting. Thanks, Deej. Another good suggestion there. I've actually gone for a slightly different position. I haven't gone for 6. I have decided to look at a Madison potential alternative, but also someone who can play on the wings, but isn't Eze, because Eze is the obvious option, and I just feel Eze will end up being that player that we all want, but goes to a Man City or a Chelsea for a stupid fee, and we back out at what his value really is, which is probably around that 50 to 60 million pound mark. We go, that's our limit, and someone goes, here's your 70 million quid up front, and here's a ridiculous salary to him. But
well,
maybe
hold on, just one thing that I need to add. It looks like Bayern Munich just signed Ito, so all my research for nothing.
Company new. So he's going to pair up Eric Dyer now. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I've actually gone for a player called Cherki. I can't pronounce. It's a French name. Plays for Lyon. Thing I like about him is he's obviously a creative 10 player that can play in that role, or on the left, or on the right. Dynamic winger. So I just think he brings something a bit different from that side. The reservations I have are that he hasn't particularly popped up with many goals, which is kind of an area we do need more of a goal-scoring player in that position. But he's got a great work rate. He's consistently stayed fit. He's a versatile player in those positions. And I love exploiting players who've got 1 year left on their contract. Can't help it. So yeah, he's out of contract 2025. He's only 20 years old. So I think he could be a nice option for our midfield as well. He is on decent salary on 70k a week. So that does show how much Lyon value him. That's a lot of money for a League One club for a 20-year-old. But yeah, Cherki is, Cherki, Cherki, is who I picked out for that position. So strikers, this could be fun.
Can I just give for the number 10 role? I won't go into too much detail, but there was one. He's out with an ACL anyway till the end of the year. But I kind of put him in for Johnny's sake. It was Lewis Ferguson. He's been at Bologna, so obviously a Scot, but he's someone who's come across to Italy, taken to it like a duck to water, become captain of Bologna. And he is someone I think that fits in with what you're saying, Jim. Is he someone who comes in with a lot of goals and assists?
He's 25 as well, so he's had a bit of a later resurgence to his career, is he? Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting to watch. I'm actually going to be watching my YouTube compilations of him on the way over to my holiday tomorrow. So yeah, thanks for that suggestion as well. We'll look at up front, shall we? And then, by the way, what we'll do after this is we'll have a little vote on which ones we want to put in, and we'll update the Tottenham squad based on the outgoings, incomings, and what it would look like signing these players. And we will take into account the homegrown and club-grown limits as well. But strikers, assuming Richie's staying as well, guys, who have we gone for? So I'll start with you, mix-up, Stu, this time. If you've gone for striker.
So strikers, we'll do wingers later. Okay, so strikers, I've only gone for one.
Separate from midfield. Okay, let's go for wingers. Go for wingers.
So wingers, I've gone for two. I'll go for. I'll talk about one. I'll give a nomination to Bakayoko because I think he's brilliant. But we probably won't be getting him because it's right winger, and we still have Kulu and Johnson. So I'll mention Chiesa. So Chiesa is obviously a well-known Italian player, son of a famous footballer. He has suffered with some injuries, but he can play all across the front. So he's mainly left winger, but he can play on the right as well. And he can also play as kind of a second striker or like a number 10 behind the main striker. He's great on the ball, great technique. I think he is someone with 1 year left on his contract. So I don't think that Juve would be able to ask for too much money. He's got a great eye for key pass. He's good at dribbling. The only thing, obviously, he's not good in the air. He's quite short. But I think he is someone that could be a great asset to us and fits that kind of multi-utility player across the front. And he's still quite young. if you look at it, he's only 26 years old, so he still has quite a few years ahead of him.
Interesting. Did any of you guys have wingers as well you wanted to add in here, or 10s? Anyone else?
I'll stick a similar player in the sense that they can play across the front line would be Kyogo Furuhashi. Now, it's a little bit out of the profile that we normally go for because he's a little bit older. I think he's 28 or something like that now. And obviously, Ange knows him well from his years at Celtic, and he was like just a standout player in the SPL. And there have been a lot of players who've gone from the SPL and been huge in the Premier League. Anyone who's snobby about that and it's dismissive about that, it needs their heads read. But I like him a lot. He's really, really quick. He's really agile. He's very direct. Presses really, really well. He's a good finisher. Obviously, already knows the Ange system. His work rate, as I said, is absolutely superb. So I think that, like, from considering the value that he would potentially bring, I don't necessarily think he's going to be somebody who's going to come in and be in our first 11, but I think he's somebody who would add depth. When we've often spoken before about players who've previous squads where we've had 3 or 4 really top goal scoring options up front, and that doesn't really exist at the moment. We've really only got Richie and Sonny, to be honest, that we can count on a decent number of goals. So I think that Kyogo, just from I was looking at other strikers, but he can play on the wings as well as through the middle, and I think that actually he wouldn't be a bad shout at all. So I definitely would be quite happy if he were to be brought in. It'd be interesting to see would Ange go in and upset the Celtic supporters with punching one of their better players. So I think he's worth a shout.
Interesting. We don't really take many players from the SPL into the Premier League, do we?
No.
So it'd be interesting to see it happen.
Steve Archibald. It's been a while. I'm sure there's been a few since then.
I have also gone for a not number 9, especially because it seems like we're going to keep Richarlison, and I think that the potential depth that we can have is weaker on the wings than it is through the middle, especially if we decide to keep Troy Parrott, and if we decide to get rid of Solomon. And so, with that in mind, I went for someone who I think could potentially be our long-term Son replacement, especially because he is coming up on the end of his contract, and I don't know what's going to happen with it. So I went for Desiree Doué from Rennes. He is a player that is, I think he's still 19. He was, at least at the time, the 3rd youngest ever scorer in the Europa League. And he is just a fantastic product from France. He's very fun to watch play, a very, very good carrier of the ball. His decision-making afterwards definitely can use some work, but he's 19. Like, that's not something that I'm necessarily worried about at this point in his career. Like I said, he makes a lot of progressive carries. He's really good at using his body to shield the ball as well, which is really, really helpful, especially in a more physical league like the Premier League. And he also can play anywhere. He can play on the left, he can play on the right, and he can also play as a number 10. He played there for the French youth national team, or one of the French youth national teams. I don't remember which one. I think U19 or U17. One of the two. But yeah, he's a player that definitely has a lot of room to grow. He's not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that right now we are at a point where we have a decent idea of who's going to be starting on the left, on the right, and even at number 9 right now, unless we buy someone over Richarlison. So because of that, I think that it would do us good to look more towards someone who isn't necessarily a finished product right now, but someone that in a year or two can really make that position their own, and we will have gotten them for, he won't be cheap by any stretch of the imagination. I haven't looked too much into what his pricing would be, but I think that if we didn't buy him now and we wanted to buy him like 2 seasons later and he somehow stayed at Rennes, it'd be way more expensive.
Another one to watch. Thanks, Deej. Yeah, we do. Let's hope it's David Ginola 2.0, shall we, of the modern era. So, talking of which, though, has anyone prepared strikers? Because I did want to talk about the...
I've got one dream striker.
Go on, who's your dream striker?
So this is not that realistic. It's only realistic if the rumors are true that ENIC is about to sell a portion of the club, because I can't see us throwing this kind of money around. But I would love Lautaro Martinez from Inter. And the reason I mention it is because Inter have got some financial problems, basically been taken over by the US company now. The Chinese owner basically wasn't able to pay back his loans. So it's created a bit of unrest. Martinez wants a new contract. With all this unrest, he hasn't been offered the contract yet. He only has 2 years left. And he would cost a lot of money. We're talking 100 million. His salary is 185. So again, we're looking at 200,000 a week, if not more. But he guarantees goals. He has no weaknesses. He's fast. He's agile. He's good on the ball. He's not particularly tall, but even there, he's good in the air. He can even play out wide. When Lukaku was at Inter, he would be more of the wide player with Lukaku in the middle and putting crosses for him. He'd be absolutely brilliant. A real marquee signing.
For those people who I know, I've talked about Lautaro Martinez to some of my friends who also follow Tottenham, and to those who don't watch as much Italian football as Stuart, take his word for it. I promise you, the World Cup was not an accurate representation of his ability, because I know there were a lot of people after the World Cup, we were linked to him, or around the World Cup, and I saw a bunch of my friends, a bunch of people on social media decided that 3 games made a player, and that is simply not true. I completely agree. I think he is someone who is absolutely outstanding, and I would be happy to have him at Tottenham.
Interesting. All right, well, I'd say do tune in for the following episode to this one, which is around our finances, to see if we can afford him, because there was some pleasant news in amongst that if we can offload the right people. And we will finish this pod. I want to talk a little bit about the big news today of offloading Ndombele, which was a big step in the right direction for reasons, for many reasons. And but I also do want to mention the other obvious one, that the smell's not going to go away. He's going to be linked to us until someone else signs him. Ivan Toney. And I don't think we'd sign him without the homegrown issues. But I think logically we have to face up to that. And a lot of the players we've all mentioned on this, apart from Martinez, have been young, 18 to 24-year-old, exciting prospect players at good value. And I do think there is room to say maybe we should go for a leader who's in their peak years, who's a very strong physical striker, whose work rate is very underrated. Like, Tony's not a lazy player by any means. He's an intelligent player. He's a strong player. He's also got pretty good vision as a player as well. He's quite a creative type forward. I think he brings, and the way we play Avenge is all about bringing other players into the attack. It's not about having a focal point number 9. I do think he would relish as well that I'm the main man at a big football club. And that's no disrespect to Brentford. Well, it is disrespect to Brentford, saying it out loud. But I do think even if he went to Arsenal, I think he would step up and absolutely love being the shithouse striker of a big club. And he would be the difference between them finishing 5 points behind Man City to finishing 1 point ahead of Man City. He can also take penalties. I just feel like if he went there, it would be a few months until the Levy out strong army starts saying, why didn't we sign him? He's what we need. He's better than Richarlison. And I think having both those players fighting for a spot, they're both quite fiery individuals, could be a really... And lastly, actually, the thing when looking at his scout reports, his aerial ability. I can't believe when Kane left how much we actually missed him on defensive set pieces as much as offensive set pieces. And having Tony back in the box, a really intelligent footballer who understands what his opposing number 9 is trying to do, defending against that number 9, I think could be really, really powerful. So yeah, that's mine. But does anyone else have any other players they want to?
Can I pop just on Tony, because the player I was looking at up front that I didn't know much about, who was less obvious, was this fella, Stu again, almost certainly would know him because he's Dutch. This lad Joshua Zirkzee, and then I did a lot of reading, and then I started to watch his clips, and I thought, okay, he does not look like he's got much product. I mean, very wasteful, and okay, from what I saw, okay, that's probably potentially very harsh, but in terms of the Tony link, I was really against us being interested in him for most of the season. Obviously, he was always going to be looking to move. I didn't like, like most supporters who were skeptical, didn't like the way that he treated Brentford when he came back. Like he was really disrespectful to Brentford when they'd been so supportive of him. And I kind of thought, well, his personality maybe fits Arsenal a bit more than us. But like exactly what you just said there, Jim, I think that if he did go to a rival, we would potentially really regret it, and I not making the effort to sign. And I think his stock seems to have dropped a bit in the last couple of months because of the way that he's presented himself. And he wasn't being selected for some of the games towards the end of the season as well. But I think that you could argue that you might get him at a better price because he's got the 1 year left on his contract. You might. I've heard like talk of 40 or 45 million. If you could get Tony for that kind of money, I don't know if that's realistic or not. But I think maybe with a year to go, that isn't that far off potentially. And I think actually, with that, like you said, he's a proven Premier League goal scorer with a huge range of attributes. And maybe he does have actually now the motivation to, as you said, not just be the main man, the main goal scorer at a much bigger club, but also like to prove the doubters wrong, to push his England credentials. There's a lot there you'd like to think that as a professional he would be driven by and would take the opportunity. You've mentioned Ndombele. Clearly, not every professional footballer has that in their makeup. So it is a little bit of a risk, but I think given what he's done over the last few years for Brentford, it's be a pretty worthy risk, to be honest. And I'd be much more open to it than I probably would have been a couple of months ago.
The only thing I would say about Tony, though, is I could be wrong, but I remember he scored like 3 in his first 4 goals when he came back and then didn't score again in like the next 10 games. But also in general, aren't a lot of his goals penalties? Not that many come from open play, and that's a bit of a red flag for me as well for a striker.
Yeah.
Especially considering we had, 2 penalties in a season?
Yeah, he's not going to come in and score 20
on
goals.
penalties, don't come to Tottenham.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We only had 1 penalty last season, didn't we? Was it 1 in total? I think it was.
What was the second? I remember Newcastle.
I thought we got 1 after that. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it wasn't many.
That sounds right.
You got one.
I think he'll be one that we all know is not worth £60 million, £50 million, what they want. So it will be one of, we know we've got Richarlison. We are going to sign another wide player that offers more of a goal threat. We are going to improve that number 6 position. We are going to improve the wing back position. We are likely going to get a backup centre back. So those are the 5 priority things. But it will be kind of end of the window. Has he not gone yet? Brentford has the last chance to sell him. Let's chuck 25 million quid in there and see what happens. I think it'll be more kind of that style of signing, depending on how the window goes. But if Arsenal walk in tomorrow, I think annoyingly he's what Arsenal need and what Chelsea need, because it's a big step up on Jackson as well. And he offers something completely different to Jesus, and he's a natural number 9, whereas Jesus isn't. And Nketiah, he's better than Nketiah. So if we don't get him out, rivals will, and they will upgrade their centre forward position with him. That's kind of how I look at it.
We had our second penalty of the season against Arsenal, by the way.
There you go.
That's
what it was.
Yeah, we had 2.
Yeah. But I guess in tied for second to last instead of last in terms of penalties drawn.
Yay.
We're massive.
Yeah. Considering that we're one of the top 3 sides in terms of time in the opposition box as well, I believe it's amazing that we only had 2 penalties. But we have some positive news. We've finally offloaded Ndombele. Less positive, but it's also positive for our balance sheet, is that Sessegnon's career is obviously announced to be coming to an end with us. We've got Royale strongly linked with an €18 million transfer to AC Milan. So that's kind of starting to look quite positive with those deadwood players. We've only got Reguilon, which I think might be on Højbjerg. Celso's being heavily linked now as well. To Batiste, yeah.
Brian Hill.
Spence to Genoa.
One of the things that I found interesting is that didn't we pick up the extra year option on Roden's deal?
We did.
Yes.
Which, I don't know. I mean, I guess we think that he must have some sort of sell-on value.
Yeah, well, he had strong interest from Leeds, didn't he? But it could equally be is that our fourth choice centre back? If we can't sign anyone and we hold on to him, see how it goes. If we can find better, sell him. If we can't, just keep him.
And I'm sure worst case scenario, we got a loan fee for him in his last year.
Yeah, true. Yes, and his wages aren't big, so it doesn't really matter if you got him on the books. Unlike in Ndombele, who was 240 grand a week, which was just
Thank God that's gone.
Yeah.
Is there any detail about what the agreement with him is now?
I've
So
looked at
it
the
was
report.
amicable, which means that is, I think, journalism speak for. We did not pay him everything we owed him.
Yeah.
So realistically, can't get better than that. It's not like he was going to walk for free.
I saw a rumor somewhere that we managed to do it due to the clause in the contract that basically he didn't meet his contractual obligations, and I wonder if that was a fitness thing.
Interesting. Gone down the legal route. Done the city. I do need to wrap up there, guys, but it's been a pleasure. Looking positive start to the transfer window. I think it's going to be a slow window because of the international break. A lot of players we've talked about today is their values. Some clubs will be saying, I'm not selling them until they're played for their country because I think I can inflate their value. Others will have bad tournaments, and that will have the other effect as well. So
And
let's see.
others will have to sell before the 30th of June.
This is true as well. Although Chelsea have gotten around their financial fair play issue by selling their training ground to themselves.
Has that been approved yet? I thought
Apparently
that hadn't
it
been
was.
approved yet. It was?
Yeah, they voted
So
on whether to close that loophole, and it didn't get a 2/3 majority. Surprisingly, Chelsea voted to keep it. Newcastle were fine with keeping it.
Villa.
Man City, Villa, and I believe Everton were fine with it. So by the end of it, anyway, we didn't have a majority. So it was a majority, but it wasn't a 2/3 majority, which has to be. So there we go. Anyway, boys, up the Spurs.
Spurs.